بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا ثم بعد. My brothers and sisters, this is the concluding session on Abu Bakr Siddiq Akbar رضي الله عنه وارضاه. Truly, somebody like me cannot do justice to Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq رضي الله عنه. I cannot be just in describing him, his contribution, because he is the one about whom Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I have repaid the favors that I owed to everybody in my life except Abu Bakr رضي الله عنه. And he said that the favor that I owe to Abu Bakr رضي الله عنه, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will repay that on my behalf. I cannot do justice to the greatness and to the karamat and to the fada'il of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, who is a man about whom Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that if the weight of the faith, of the iman, of all the Muslims, from the first to the last, is placed on one pan of the scale, and the faith of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu is placed on the other hand, the faith of Abu Bakr will be heavier in the sight of Allah than the faith of all Muslims until the end of time. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu is the one about whom Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi, he said that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi actually mentioned he said that he mentioned some other Sahaba, and he said so and so and so and so died shaheed fi sabilillah. And he said so and so used to pray all night, and so forth. He mentioned a long list. And then he said, however, the faith and the position of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu far exceeds any and all of them, not because he died a shaheed, because he died in his bed, not because he prayed all night, because he did not pray all night, he prayed as much as he prayed. He said, but because of something that settled in his heart. And that something was his connection with Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That something was the essence of Islam. Khashyatullah wa hubb of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. This is what distinguishes Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu from anyone and everyone else. So therefore I seek your forgiveness and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive me for even attempting to talk about him, but this is something that has to be done because it is very important for us to remember our past. And by our past, I don't mean my past as in my lineage, which alhamdulillah Allah has given me nothing to complain about there either, but our true lineage as Muslims that we share with every other Muslim on the face of the planet, irrespective of their race and creed and irrespective of their, not creed, color, their race and color and their nationality and their geographic position and location and origin. And that legacy is the legacy of our Salafus Salihin, of our predecessors in Islam, the pious predecessors in Islam. The first of them are the Sahaba, the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. So though Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu remained as the Khalifa of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam for only 2 years after he sallallahu alayhi wa sallam passed away, his impact on Islam and the Muslims globally and until the end of time is more than the impact of anybody else. After the passing away of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu was unanimously accepted as the Khalifa. Although he faced many crises after becoming the Khalifa. Imam al-Zahabi, rahmatullahi alayhi, he says, when the news of the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam spread, many groups of people among the Arabs objected, they apostatized, they left Islam, they objected to paying zakat, and Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu decided to fight them. He sent out Saraya, he sent out battalions to go and collect zakat from those people, and he said if they don't give them, we fight them. And he himself participated in that. He himself left Medina and he participated, obviously at the risk of his life, in this collection of zakat. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu and others, they even tried to argue with him, and they said two things. They said, how will you fight Muslims? These are Muslims. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu said, the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the one who separates the salah from the zakat has left Islam, is not a Muslim anymore. And this is in reference to the demand that the people of Taif made, which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam rejected. When they came to him in Medina, they said, we will accept Islam, but we will not pay zakat. We will pray, we accept Islam, we accept you as the Rasul of Allah, and we will pray, but we will not give zakat. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the one who separates the salah from the zakat has left Islam. It's not acceptable. The Sahaba at that, some of the Sahaba at that time also tried to tell Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They tried to persuade him and say, look, this is a big tribe, Banu Thaqif, accept them, let them come into Islam. After that we can, they will come, gradually they will pay zakat and so on. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no, there is no conditionality in accepting of Islam. You accept Islam unconditionally or Allah does not need you. As simple as that. And obviously this makes, it makes in eminent sense, because if somebody is picking and choosing what they will obey from the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam and what they will not obey, then this is not, this goes against the very spirit of Islam, because Islam is taslim, Islam is to accept, Islam is to bow in submission before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you cannot say that you are submitting when that submission is conditional. Selective obedience is disobedience, because when you are selecting that you will obey this and you will not obey that, then where is the obedience in that? There is no obedience. And so Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu said, by Allah, if they refuse to pay even a rope of the camel which is due in zakat, which they used to pay at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I will fight them for withholding it. Then they tried to tell him, you don't leave Medina, let the troops go, you stay here because your safety is paramount. He said, how can Abu Bakr stay in safety in Medina when the religion of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is in danger? So just think about this. Think about what kind of people these were. And that's the reason I began by saying that it is critically important, it's very important for us to study the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the seerah of the Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajmain, because only then can we understand the value of Islam. Today, for a lot of people, Islam is a convenience. We do what we feel like doing, we do what looks nice, we do what we enjoy doing, we do what we can do easily and conveniently. And the moment it comes to something which may be inconvenient, we push it aside and we run behind the dunya, whatever that dunya might be. This is the principal difference. This is the principal difference, and this is the reason why we have the kinds of problems that we have in our lives, which the Sahaba didn't have. And that reason is because the Sahaba, Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in, the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they made the deen muqaddam. They made the deen central. They made Islam central to their lives, and everything else in their lives, they changed it, they modified it, they made it compatible with Islam, and if it could not be made compatible, they left it. It was very simple. Islam is not to be tampered with. Islam is not to be tampered with. Islam is not to be re-engineered. The deen, this came from Allah, and it came, Allah sent us and told us to obey Him. Atiullaha wa atiur rasula faqad faza fawzan azima. The one who man yuti illaha wa rasulahu faqad faza fawzan azima. Allah said, Atiullah wa atiur rasul, obey Allah and obey the Rasul. And He said, the one who obeys Allah and His Rasul, only that person is finally successful. No compromise in that. Allah did not say the one who obeys Allah and the Rasul in any way that he sees fit. The one who obeys Allah and His Rasul sometimes. The one who obeys Allah and His Rasul only on Fridays, or only inside the masjid, or only when he is in an Islamic gathering. Right? How many times do we see this? Our sisters, may Allah bless them, they go all over the place. Right? They go to shopping malls and this and that and the other, and do whatever they do in their lives, and no hijab, nothing. Their hair floating around in a halo around their heads. But when they come to an Islamic gathering, when they come to the masjid, then they gracefully drape a dupatta partially over the head. Why? For what? We don't have double standards in Islam. We don't have one standard for Allah and another standard for the people. There are Muslims who come to pray only in Ramadan. We are coming close to Ramadan now. Suddenly the masjid will fill up. Why? The masjid was there all the time. You were a Muslim all the time. What prevented you from coming to the masjid? So when Ramadan comes, you come to the masjid. Last day of Ramadan, 29th or 30th. After that, first day of Shawwal, which is the day of Eid, masjid is empty. I've said this many times. I said if masjids had a voice, and of course they have a voice with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what we call the day of Eid al-Fitr, the day of rejoicing for us, the masjid will call this a day of mourning, a day of sadness, because it's empty. Convenience. The Sahaba did not do this. For the Sahaba, it was the opposite. They made their lives subject to Islam. And that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then gave them the world. If you read history, if you think about this and you read history, it's a completely unimaginable thing. How a bunch of Arabs who were nomadic people, some of them were traders. These were not people with a standing army. These were not people with a tradition and history of warfare. These were not people who knew how to run campaigns and to run, to have legions in the field with long supply chains and supply lines and so on. They were not people like the Romans who, marched 25 miles a day and then built a fort at the end of each day. These were not people with command structures, right? These were people not even with one king. And historically, for thousands of years, from you go all the way back to where the Arabs originated in Yemen, they were not people like this. The Romans were, the Persians were, the Egyptians were, the Mesopotamians were, the Parthians were, the people of Babylon, they were. These were, the Greeks were, under Alexander. These were warring nations. These were nations with standing armies and with, all that comes and goes with all that. Maintaining an army and training and all kinds of things. These were the people. Yet, these Arabs who came out of nowhere, out of the desert, they conquered not just anyone, they conquered the two superpowers of the time who had been in power for over 1,000 years each. The Persian Empire, the Sassanians for even longer. Massive empires with huge armies, with history of warfare, of history of victory in warfare, out of the blue. That blue was the glow of Islam. When they entered Islam and they submitted themselves to the will of Allah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the world. And they became the superpower, not just of that time, but they remained a superpower for another 1,000 years. And at various levels, they were not a superpower all the time, but they were a powerful people. The Muslims were a powerful people from that time, from the 7th century all the way to 1926. And if you read that whole history, even if you read the decline, it is directly linked to what I mentioned before, which is when the Muslims inverted this equation, the equation of Allah first, and they inverted that to me first, I first. When they worked and they lived their lives on the equation that whatever Allah commanded will be obeyed at any cost. My life will be altered, my life will be changed, my time will be altered, my time will be changed. Nothing will come in the way of obeying Allah. When this was inverted, to say that I will obey Allah, but only when it suits me, only when it is convenient for me, only when it is painless for me, only when it does not interfere with my schedules. Think about that. Today we have Muslims, people who claim to be Muslims, people who have Muslim names, who come from Muslim families, whose parents are Muslims, who do not pray because it is not convenient, the time is not convenient, who do not fast in Ramadan because I go to the gym. It interferes with my gym schedule. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. What kind of Islam is this? This is not the Islam which any of the Sahaba would recognize, believe me. This is not Islam at all in the first place. And this is what Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radi Allah anhu established on day one. So therefore his khidmah, his service to Islam is that after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away immediately, there was severe danger to Islam. In the sense that people were leaving Islam, and they were leaving not because they didn't like the theology of Islam, they were leaving because of money. They said, we will not pay zakat. You were paying zakat to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is dead, he is passed away, so we will not give zakat. And Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu said, no, you are paying zakat to the institution that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said left behind. The institution of the state, the institution of the community. And therefore, that remains. And you must pay. Zakat is a personal fard on you as an individual, irrespective of who is the leader of the community, whether it is the Prophet or whether it is his Khalifa. And that is why Rasulullah, Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu was the only one with the title Khalifatul Rasulillah, the Khalifa of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After him, when Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu came to power, that is when the title of Amirul Mu'mineen came to being, and that remained until the Khilafah itself was abolished. So Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, he kind of, not objected, but he put in his alternate view about fighting Muslims, and he said, how can you fight with these people? Because these people are Muslims. And Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu said that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I have been ordered by Allah to fight the people till they say none has the right to be worshipped but Allah. And whoever said it, then he will save his life and property from me except on trespassing the law, and his account will be with Allah. And Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu reiterated, and he said, by Allah I will fight those who differentiate between Salah and Zakat, because Zakat is a compulsory right to be taken from the property according to Allah's orders. Then Umar radiallahu anhu said, by Allah, it was nothing but Allah brought relief to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu toward the decision to fight, and I came to know that this decision was right. That decision was the reason why the Muslim community did not disintegrate, and that Islam remained and remained strong. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu raised the banner of war on all fronts. The desert of the Hijaz never witnessed, even in the time of Rasulullah, such battles, grinding battles, as those that occurred. And Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, as I mentioned to you, himself took part in them. But the men that were trained by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam upon the recognition of the truth and total submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and complete sincerity in their deeds, they fought for the sake of Islam, and they defeated this whole trend towards apostasy. And Islam was saved from the brink of disaster. Another one of the greatest achievements of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu was the compilation of the Quran al-Kareem, of putting it all together in one form. As we know, the Quran was revealed to Rasulullah over a period of 23 years, and the order of the compilation is not in the order of revelation. The order of revelation is different from the order of compilation. And the order of revelation is, it was revealed as it was needed, but the compilation was something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded and guided. And Jibreel alayhi salam taught Rasulullah the order of compilation. And in the last year of his life, in the month of Ramadan, Jibreel alayhi salam listened to the Quran bisawti Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the voice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, twice, 2 khatmas. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to recite the entire Quran to Jibreel alayhi salam in every Ramadan, but in the last Ramadan of his life, he recited it 2 times. So this compilation, this order of the surahs, starting from Surah Al-Fatiha, ending in Surah Al-Nas, this was well known to the Sahaba. But the Quran had been written. So it was, the entire Quran was also written down, but it was and this was written down during the life of Rasulullah, and people would write the Quran and they would recite it back to him and he would correct it, and that is how it was compiled. That is how they actually, on a side note, that's how the ahadith, the teachings of Rasulullah were also compiled in his lifetime, where people wrote them down and they recited them back to him and they said, Ya Rasulullah, you said such and such. And he said, yes, I said such and such. Where this was not the case, he said, no, not this. This is how I said it. And they corrected it. And so anyone who claims that the ahadith were only written down a century or two after Rasulullah passed away is talking through his hat. He doesn't know what he's saying. They were written down in his lifetime, and he corrected and he confirmed that they were collected together in the different collections that we have, and which we know as Bukhari and Muslim and Nasai and Abi Dawud and Tirmidhi and so forth. All of this was done later, but obviously if you say Imam Bukhari collected the hadith, he could not have collected something that did not exist. So when you said collected, it means that automatically it existed. How did it exist? Because some Sahabi wrote it down and kept it with him, and through the body of knowledge which is called Ilmul Rijal, we have the actual chain of preservation and reservation and preservation and recording all the way back to Rasulullah ﷺ for every single one of the hadith. Walhamdulillah. So the Quran was written down and people knew the order, but it had not been compiled in a book form. Now its memorization, again, it was something which happened from day one. Rasulullah ﷺ himself was the Hafiz of the Quran, and so were all the great Sahaba around him. Not every Sahabi was a Hafiz, but many of them were, men and women. Sayyidah Aisha Siddiqa Radi Allah Anha was a Hafiza of the Quran, and many of the Azwajatul Muttaharat, Ummahatul Mu'mineen, and so forth. So it was memorized, and this memorization was perfect, and that's how to this day it is checked from the Qari. If you have if there is a doubt about a particular ayah, which is the way it's written down, you go to a Qari and say, please recite this, and when he recites it, you correct it. So alhamdulillah, the book was preserved in memory. It was also preserved in writings, but these were with different people, and it was not in the form of one book. Now, over the years, from the time of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, from the terrible tragic incident of Bir Ma'una, and other times in different battles and so on, a number of the memorizers, member of the Qurra, member of the Huffaz of the Quran, they passed away, they were killed. And therefore, Sayyidina Umar Radiallahu Anhu decided, and he thought that steps should be taken to preserve the Quran intact in its original form against any kind of risk. And he said that he saw that this was, it was not prudent to depend exclusively on those who had memorized it, because people die, and therefore if they die, then the book is lost. Therefore he urged Abu Bakr Siddiq Radiallahu Anhu to have it written down in the form of a book. Abu Bakr Radiallahu Anhu was very, very particular about doing only what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did. So initially he hesitated because he said Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had not done it. However, after some debate on the subject, he agreed and he appointed Zayd bin Thabit Radiallahu Anhu for this work. And Zayd bin Thabit also was one of the people. He eventually headed a group of people who did this, compiled the Quran. He also was head of the group of people who used to compile the Ahadith of Rasulullah. Now he also hesitated initially at the thought of undertaking this enormous task, but then he started doing it, and of course he was one of the most competent and capable of the companions of Rasulullah who had directly learned the Quran from Rasulullah, and therefore he was the best person, and he compiled, and he had a group of helpers. Now, after he compiled this into one book, he submitted the precious collection of this book to Sayyidina Abu Bakr Radi Allah Anhu, who kept it in his possession until the end of his life. Now, during the Khilafah of Umar ibn al-Khattab Radi Allah Anhu, it was placed in the custody of Hafsa bint Umar ibn al-Khattab, his daughter and the wife of Rasulullah. Finally, in Sayyidina Uthman bin Affan Radi Allah Anhu's time, when different readers in different parts of the world, because by now the Khilafah had expanded and gone all the way up to Sham, up to Syria, Iraq, Iran, what is now Iran, which is Persia, and so forth. So people were reciting in different dialects and different forms. So Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu, this was his great contribution. He had copies of this original Mus'haf made, and he had them distributed to different parts of the Muslim world, of the empire, as the standard to be followed in the in reciting and reading the Quran. The modern edition, what we read of the Mus'haf, is the Uthmani copy, which is the copy that Uthman radiallahu anhu had, and this is considered the standard to which every other copy of the Quran should conform. Sayyid bin Thabit radiallahu anhu said, "By Allah, if Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu had ordered me to shift one of the mountains from its place, it would not have been harder for me than what he ordered me concerning the collection of the Quran." And he continued, and he said that I started locating Quranic material and collecting it from parchments, from scapula, which is flat bone, from leaf stalks of date palms, and from the memories of people. Finally, I want to end with a quote by none other than Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, who said, "The one who has the greatest reward among the people is Abu Bakr, because he was unique in compiling the Quran al-Kareem." This is the quote of Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us to appreciate the value of the Quran al-Kareem and to use it in the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted us to use it, which is to read it, to memorize it, to live by it. The Quran al-Kareem came to be lived by, and that is what we need to remind ourselves and do. وصلى الله على نبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين والحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.